Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. It has been an eventful week of Zadnor, and now I am wrapping up my honors grind, and by wrapping up, I mean I've got several 100 million metal to go before I have 10 of each of the honors in Zadnor, and I probably don't have the time to realistically do that before other things take my attention. We have a charity event coming up on June 3rd where I will be playing Final Fantasy XIV, but when I'm doing charity events, I stop playing and, of course, talk about the charity. We're doing Extra Life again. That's something I haven't done in quite some time. Historically, we've raised over $20,000 for Extra Life, but as I was moving around California for many years, I stopped doing charity events just because I was trying to focus on making sure I had a stable life. And so we haven't done many charity events as of late. So because of that, I'm excited to do something. Frosty is going to be organizing a chocobo racing thing for it as well. So we're going to have some eventful stuff coming out of that, and I'm looking forward to it. Maybe a couple of highlights for YouTube to come from that as well. So you might hear me remind you about that in videos throughout the week. I have a couple that are coming out on Dalriada. I have my 1v1 guides that are coming out. And I'm not doing the cheese strat, in case anyone's wondering. So that's what I'm going to be working on this week for the most part. We also had a great idea on stream that I won't tell you about here on YouTube, but I mean it's another like shit posting style one, like the Gathering one, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'll leave you with that. We have some other exciting surprises on the way as well. So be on the lookout for some pretty cool looking stuff. That's all I'll say. Anyway, let's get to the questions because last week's episode was a super long one. Thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon for supporting. Now, I'm on a new PC now, and so the sponsor list, it's just I haven't had a lot of time. I've had a lot of other things. Aloha had to go to the vet this week. He had to get an endoscopy because he swallowed a toy, and I've been working on some other stuff. So I'm probably going to be missing on the screen for a little bit. I do have files to like fix that, but I just need to take like the time to remember, and I'm so bad at remembering things. So thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon. Apologies if I forget to add the name lists right here for this week, but I'll do my best to try to remember it in subsequent weeks. And thank you to those people supporting over there, because it really does nothing for you except support the channel here. So I appreciate that. Also, thank you to our patrons of Darkness, Khuja, Janova, and Kurenai Oni for going above and beyond. So thank you to those two as well. And thank you to everyone for watching this week's episode. Now let's see what the Q&A has in store for me, shall we? All right, first question, hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Hello, you doing all right? I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Long-time watcher, first-time asker, welcome. Do you think they'll add a new job category under healer since there's an empty space? I've always thought they could add a physical mage like Rune Fencer or Mystic Knight. No, I don't think they'll ever create a new category. They might make a job that wears a specific armor set, but the big thing is just that. I don't think they ever make another armor set for the game ever again, because quite frankly, the amount of armor sets that we have, or the variety of them between the different jobs, even amongst the super generic ones, is kind of annoying. And adding another one just is another tool. Now, I will say that they have set themselves up to more seamlessly add one because they have the coffers now. But I just don't think they'll add another category. I think they'd sooner label something like that as a maiming job, or do what they did with Ninja, where they kind of like reworked the rules of how stats work and how they started like incorporating their stats onto a specific armor set, like they did with striking when it first came out. Sooner than release another one. I wouldn't say it's impossible. I think, like you say, there's room. Like I said, I think there's precedent for it. I think they've set it up so it's possible to do, but it's just not something that I'm personally thinking that they'll do. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Haps. Quick question. Welcome. Hello. Let's get to it. Do you know what the honor point cap is, and if it's per area, and if it's total, and using this total, can I redistribute the way I want? So you can have up to 10 of each honor. Doesn't matter how you get there. All you need to know is that in total, that's going to make for 90 proofs of metal, which is going to be 600 million metal. That math doesn't sound right. 20 million is the... I mean, I know it's 600 million metal. Wait, is it 90 proofs? 1, 1, 2, 2. So that's what? That's 4. It's like, don't do math. We've said don't do math before. It's 600 million metal to get all of them, and you can have all of them. You cannot redistribute them once you've started spending. They do not have the same cost throughout the levels. You cannot refund them, but you can also max out all of them, 10, 10, and 10. So that's whatever you have. Yeah, you say you're at 4, 5, and 4. You're stuck with that, but there's no max of 25. It's just you can cap each and every one of them at 10. All right, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, hope you're doing well. Hi, hope you're doing well also. I'm super excited for the Xenos redemption arc. No, please don't do that. Don't even give him a modicum of that. I think he's so far beyond it. Anyway, do you think it's possible they'll nerf the 20-20-20 memory step or the Timeless artifact step before Endwalker hits? I think Timeless I think the time-worn artifacts, almost certainly, but the memory step is super easy, so I don't think so. They might buff the rate at which they drop in the southern front, again, to reiterate that people can actually farm it there, but I did it there, and I got hundreds of them, and it's just, I guess it never really occurred to me that it even needed a nerf. They might, but honestly, it's a 100% drop rate from Heavensward Fates, so maybe they just make Heavensward Fates drop multiples, and they just increase the drop rate in Bozja to 100%. I don't know, because it's not really that hard of a step. But Time Warns, I wouldn't be surprised if they nerf them in 5.57 or 5.58. All right, next one, hashtag Pretty Happy Mondays. Hi, Happy. My Mondays are pretty happy. How about yours? Well, no. No, actually, I don't even notice Mondays because every day is a Monday, a Friday, a Wednesday to me, so I never even notice these things. Joking aside, with the long time frame between 5.55 and 6.0, do you think they could surprise us with 5.6? No. That's an easy answer. The answer is no. We already know entirely what their patch schedule is. We know that they're not going to cancel Ultimate and then release a 5.6. Let me just put it that way. In the simplest of terms, that won't happen. So... and I know that seems like extreme, like, oh, Ultimate's for such a small point of the community, and 5.6 is, that would be a major patch that everyone could enjoy. It's the amount of effort involved between the two. A full other patch would be a lot more effort than that one Ultimate encounter would be. And besides, we already know they are full-fledged going on Endwalker. They wanted to release Endwalker earlier, but decided that with the added time, they were going to have to make it a November deadline. So there's no way they have the time, resources, effort at all to do another major patch. So it won't happen. Hashtag Mrhappy Monday. Hey, Happy, how you doing this day or night? It's like late afternoon, early evening, I suppose. I'm doing all right. I wanted to ask, do you think we'll ever get upgraded versions of the level 80 weathered weapons like we did with the job gear? It's such a shame we never got a Shadowbringer that's dyeable. I'm going to say yes to this. I think we will. I was genuinely surprised for the same reason. In fact, so much surprised that I'm trying to remember if there was an unweathered version of it from something, anything at all. Because it really feels like there should have been. So I'm going to say yes. I think they set them up as weathered weapons so that at some point they could unweather them. Wow, I guess when or how they decide to do that is a big question mark. But yeah, no, I definitely think they'll do it at some point. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello, hi. Hope the day you see this goes well. It did. I can't say I'm complaining. Got my monk relic. Finally picked up my bike mount. I'm working my way through my honors. I'm doing good. Quick question, do you think an Endwalker may see 4 trials in the base game considering the longer story? No. They've already shown us the 2 trials that we're going to be getting in the form of Anima and the Mage's Sisters. At least the way that they've done FanFest in the past, they revealed them in the exact same manner that they normally reveal them. So very confident that those are our 2 trials. And of course, they're going to do a final trial, our final boss for the expansion, which will then get an extreme mode in the follow-up patch. So, but no, they're definitely not more than the 3 technically that we're coming to expect with 2 extremes. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello, how are you? I'm doing fine. Hope you're doing well also. Since the Void is one of the reflections split from the source, what are the chances the Void sent Avatar for Reaper is a shard of the Warrior of Light soul from the Void? I mean, we've met those who are gifted with the Echo who were deemed Warriors of Light. So more specifically, I'm assuming you're rolling under the theory of how Ardbird is one of our souls, or pieces of our soul reconnecting, or rejoining, I should say. And I don't think that's the case. I think it is going to be something that's relatively important, but I don't think that's the route. I think the idea that the Void is basically beyond all, I guess, redemption is probably, it extends to those who we would see as potential avatars. So how we're using this avatar, I have a feeling it's not as mutual of an experience as some may be assuming, meaning that we're more controlling it and, I guess, taming it than working with it. But that's nobody knows. At the end of the day, anything we say goes and nothing we say is certain. So I'll see you in Endwalker, I guess. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hi, Haps. You doing good? I'm doing good. You doing all right? No, you're doing good. Sorry, shouldn't have had to ask that. First time question, moderate watcher. If you could have one thing in 14 implemented on request, whether it's change, addition, removal, or something, what would that be? Request repair, where you can right-click another player and request for them to repair your gear. I wouldn't even use it. I would no need for it, but I want it. It was in 1.0, and you know what? I want to see it back. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Lollyho, hello. Hope you are well. Hope the same for you. First time asker, long time watcher. Well, welcome. Not sure if you play any healing jobs. Oh, I play healing jobs. Play White Mage mostly, but actually I play White Mage and Scholar pretty equally. Just don't play much Astro. Do you feel the amount of DPS options for healers is satisfying? I started in 4-4 and I missed Shadow Flare and AoE. So let me answer this very delicately. Satisfying for somebody who has been playing for quite some time and can very comfortably do more complex DPS rotations? No. Does it make sense? Yes. So basically they adjusted the idea of needing to actually do a rotation as opposed to just having quick access to damage buttons. So they have quick access to damage buttons so that if you need to stop DPSing to heal, there's very little decision making or interruption that goes into it. Now, that's great. Makes perfect sense. I get it. That doesn't mean I wouldn't be okay with getting some more tools back, but I'm realistic enough that it's not going to be catered to somebody like me who has more experience with it. I understand it'll be catered to the people who want the easiest possible time swapping between what is the role that Final Fantasy XIV expects them to do, in that of mostly DPSing and healing when necessary with the minimum tools required so that you can go back to DPSing, versus actually doing the role that the jobs are supposed to be doing, which is healing. And I think they want to make sure that it's such a quick swap between the two that I just don't see them ever making it more complex. All right, this one didn't have a hashtag, but I saw that it was a question. Hey, Mr. Happy, my dude, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Quick question regarding your personal setup. I watched your Kill of Menenias yesterday and noticed you could see quite a wide view of the field. Are you playing on a 1080p or 1440p? And which monitor do you use? I play 1080p ultra wide, but I really want to upgrade. So I'm on a 1440p monitor, but I play 1920 by 1080 windowed. I don't use anything ultra wide. I don't have any special setups. That's just what my max camera angle is. It might look like a wider camera angle because I'm a Lalafell. I've had a lot of people say that it looks like my camera goes way further back because I'm a Lalafell, when in actuality it's just because I'm smaller. So I'm wondering if you're mixing that up, because I've watched other people's perspectives, and quite frankly, I think the best perspective from a see everything standpoint is when my character is centered on the screen, or at least really close to it. When you have it so that your character is like centered, or is I guess the camera has them like downward, and you have like the camera up more. I always feel like that's the absolute best way to get the most vision, but I play with it in the center, so I don't really have much input on that. It's just 1920 by 1080p, nothing special, nothing fancy, no wide, nothing. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Happy. Are you alright? Hope you're fine and everything is. I'm doing alright. I think I was tired last week. I don't even remember. Yeah, I'm doing alright. Killing some types of mobs in Zadnor causes some critical engagements to appear stated in your video. Is that the same true for skirmishes? No, skirmishes are completely unaffected by any of the mobs that spawn skirmishes. Skirmishes just occur on basically a cooldown, depending on other skirmishes that are alive. Now, more specifically, if a skirmish spawns a... Hi, Aloha. Hey, you want to answer the question? Hey, okay, here, do this. Yeah, there you go. All right. So, if a skirmish spawns a critical condition, it's basically the same condition as the critical engagement. I said critical condition. Critical engagement, where... you need to kill the respective mobs to spawn the skirmish that spawns the critical engagement. But skirmishes that are completely unrelated to a critical engagement, they just spawn on a timer. Also, for the follow-up question, does this work on the southern front? It does for critical engagements. Critical engagements in the southern front also have specific mobs tied to them, and thus skirmishes tied to critical engagements there are spawned from those specific mobs. But no, there is no killing specific mobs spawn specific skirmishes. They just reappear at set intervals. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Aloha, you gonna stay? He's still here. He's just like slightly off camera right here. Thank you for all your hard work that you've done and continue to do so. I still remember looking up your dungeon guides when I started in Realm Reborn. Thank you, and thank you for asking a question. I noticed that in many chances where media members and content creators interview the OCP, there's not a lot of questions, if any, about the state of healing, which is understandable if none of them are experienced healers, as they don't want to be talking about things they're not familiar with. However, would you consider collecting questions from healers to ask OCP? So I'm going to give a very direct answer, and the answer is no. Because I see the questions that healers are asking, and I've asked enough questions about various things in Final Fantasy XIV, including healing from the Shadowbringers Media Tour, and I understand enough that none of the questions are reasonable questions. It's mostly things that cater to only the very top end of healers, such as the thing we mentioned earlier about not having enough involvement in DPS rotations or healing not being required enough. And I've addressed these things with Yoshi-P before, and I've asked him questions like this before, and we understand that the philosophy has moved more in those directions since then. Asking a question isn't... There's no question that really can be asked that is I guess, a valuable question. Then there's, of course, the specific questions that people ask about the jobs they want to see changes. Like, for example, pet ghosting. Like, I think asking them about pets ghosting is technically a scholar question as much as it is a summoner question, which is really more an issue about pets overall, which is why there's such a huge discussion about the statement that he made in one of my interviews lately. So that's the biggest problem, is the majority of the questions are so vastly specific to the individual and to their experience that they're not as valuable of a question as could be asked via asking something else. And also, it's a matter of a question that will actually get answered. A lot of people wonder why we don't ask certain questions, and it's because we know, whether it be there's a big info dump coming soon, a big info dump coming later, that asking questions that are just like, give me an answer to this specific thing, are so unlikely to get those answers that we're better off asking about broader subjects and allowing the developers, and Yoshi-P in particular, to just express his thoughts, because that's when we get more interesting information, because they talk about ways they considered designing things before, things they're looking at currently, and even if they don't give any details, at least gives us enough of a teaser to maybe, you know, roll it around the noggin a little bit. So I see the questions people are asking, and when I find that the questions are something that, with my experience with the interviews, is a reasonable question to ask, I will incorporate it. But I don't see that from healers most of the time. It's just very, how do I put it? I've said it enough. I think I've made the point. All right, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey there, Happy. Hope you're having a good day. I am, thank you, and hope the same for you. Watch this episode while nursing a headache, which was pretty much gone by the end, so have a get out of headache free card. Get out of headache free card. I believe we call those aspirins, which don't actually work for me most of the time, so I don't even know why I'd say that. As for my question, they've talked about there being other clans for races before, hints at a third variety for Aura, of Aura, Gosetsu being a Rogadin, but not a Seawolf or Hellsguard, etc., etc. Do you think that now that further races are getting unwieldy to add, that they will look into adding additional clans? I think this is a more reasonable ask, but I think we have to actually ask the question of when we're getting character creation updates for existing races at all. It is a big demand for people, character creation updates, but we've seen their, I guess, hesitancy to really adjust that aspect before doing anything like an engine rework. So if we were to see something like this, I do think it would be more along the lines of an engine rework, and I think it's completely within reason to do this as opposed to adding entirely new races, because usually there's slightly different features and tones for their skin, or look for their eyes or hairstyles or whatever it is, and I feel like those are just way more reasonable than entirely new skeletons. So I'm going to say yes, I think this is a pretty reasonable ask based on information they've given us in the past. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Yo, Haps, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Certain jobs need a lot of work, but others need very little, like Gunbreaker and Red Mage. Do you think we're coming to a point where very little gets done to a job in an expansion if it's already very good, or will they add more that we potentially don't need? So the answer is both, because Red Mage really didn't get much going into this expansion either. They were kind of already at a point where it's like, wow, they've really completed this job from like 1 to the end in its entirety. Obviously, it doesn't play great below, like for the lower levels, but I mean, they really didn't get all that much. The few things they got were pretty handy. They got just a little bit more to push them forward, but there's a lot of jobs that are hitting what we're calling the tipping point. And Yoshi-P has even gone as far as to call it that as well, where there are jobs that they want to be able to update and make more exciting, or give them something that, you know, they feel like, great, you know, this is my favorite job. Look at this really cool thing I got for the expansion. But that it's going to literally be a downhill trend as opposed to being something that's exciting because everything's going to get messed up, or they have to do something completely over from scratch and ruin it in the process for the people who already enjoyed it. So I don't think there's ever a point where it's, I guess, as blunt as you're saying here, but we've already experienced what you're saying. And the problem is less so that they'll do very little, and more so that they'll feel the need to update it so they can do more exciting things. Less than adding pointless things, completely redo it to add things that are more exciting overall. So it's a really, really tough balancing act, and I'm perpetually nervous that they're going to get it wrong. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Haps, you doing all right? I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. So while I was watching your video about recent interviews, my initial response to the NPC dating question was ill gross. Well, that wasn't my response. My response was like, oh. It was just like, oh, they're doing this right now. However, after giving a little thought, I have to ask, what do you think of non-romantic NPC hangouts? I think more side story and backstory quests with any character is always a good thing. A hangout I don't really know about a hangout necessarily, like a Genshin Impact style hangout, because those sometimes it depends on some of the text choices they give you. Some of them lean towards romantic, and some of them don't, depending on the character. But I guess less of a hangout. I like there to be a point to my quest. Sometimes the point of the quest is to get to know someone better, but the method through which they do it can, I guess, lean from anywhere from casual tea and biscuits to helping them with something that's really important to them. And so I like the idea, but I still, for me at least, it's on a knife's edge, because it can just be absolutely, oh God, I just don't, please, I just don't even want to do this. I'm really glad that we got to see more into this person's backstory and character, and that this wasn't weird in any way. And again, it could go so far either way at any point that I'm always just like, I'm apprehensive about it. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey Haps, you doing alright? I'm doing alright. I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. Thanks for all your content over the years. You really helped me learn when I started at the beginning of Stormblood. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and thank you for sticking around. What was the Final Fantasy that pulled you into the franchise? So, the first time I ever saw Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy VII. I was at my friend's house, and his older brother was fighting Ruby Weapon. He was dying, trying again, dying, trying again. And, you know, that was my first experience. I went home, I didn't know it was Final Fantasy VII, and even if I did, my parents no way would have gotten the Roman numerals correct. The Roman numerals correct anyway. I told them, hey, you know, for Christmas, because Christmas is coming up, can I get Final Fantasy? And they bought me Final Fantasy VIII, and that was the first one I owned. That was the first one I played through before, you know, buying 9 and then doubling back and buying 7 and then 10 and then so on and so on. So I'm going to give the credit to 8, really, because it was my first experience actually playing one, whereas 7 was like, that's cool, let me tell my parents that I want that for Christmas, and then I'll play it and see if, like, how much I like it. So I'm going to give the credit to Final Fantasy VIII. It's not one of my favorites looking back nowadays. Like, I've played all the other ones, so it just doesn't sit at the top of my list anymore. But it always has, you know, it always has a special place in my heart, even if I don't want to play it. So I guess there's that then. All right, next one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello, and one free extra hi to pocket for later. Hope you're doing well. In your past videos, you have mentioned that there will be an eventual graphical engine update or upgrade to Final Fantasy XIV. Curious if this has been said by the developers, if they are working on it. I have a gut feeling. So they've specifically said they want to do one, but that it's such a massive workload that it's so far out of the way. Like, so it's something they're definitely thinking of. Obviously, they want the game to be maintained for quite some time. And that's super important. And a graphical or engine update, even just getting DX12 or something like that, is part of that process. But it's just not going to happen anytime soon. It just made me curious as to why Final Fantasy XI hasn't been updated or upgraded, and you're confident 14 will. I'll give you one easy answer. 11 is stuck on PS2 dev kits. There's nothing they can do about that. It is so from the ground up designed with PlayStation 2. They still, to this day, have to use PlayStation 2 dev kits, because a lot of people don't know this. Final Fantasy XI was a PS2 game before it was a PC game. So because of that, it's just, they literally would have to start over, because there's no great way for them to take what they've done with PS2 dev kits and then make a PC engine with that and then upgrade it. It's doable, but not with the skeleton of a team that they have in this day and age. That is the big reason why. It's way easier to do what some people are doing with HD texture packs. Can't speak today. HD texture packs that go over the game than it is to actually do a graphical or engine update on the game itself. It would be cool if the developers officially worked on an HD texture pack, but that also would mean they'd have to more publicly discuss and or talk about using third-party tools, which are already doing these things. And I don't know that they will, because they live kind of in a very, kind of with 14, they live in this like harmony with the third-party tools where they definitely use them. They've been caught using them on dev builds before, on the Japanese developer streams before, and they have to be aware. They're literally everywhere within the Final Fantasy XI community. So yeah, it's a big thing, but that's the biggest reason they're stuck on PS2 dev kits. All right, hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Haps, hope you're doing well. Just a couple small questions. Hope you're doing well also, and a couple small answers. I've been rating since 5.2, cleared E12S as long as UCOB and soon to be UWU, hopefully followed by T. Given the timing of the launch, I want to do Pandemonium as my first hardcore prog. I was wondering if I could pick your brain for advice going into that for the first time. Hardcore prog is a lot more about the health and safety of the individuals who are participating than it is about doing 16 to 18 hours. Most people that I know, definitely know a few, and there's always one or two people at least per static that do not do this. They prepare meals in advance. They make sure they have off from work. They make sure they get proper sleep. They change their sleep schedule several days or up to a week in advance. And they make sure they have things like bottles of water instead of having to use like tap or like anything like a filter in the fridge or whatever. And I know a lot of people who take these various steps because a clear mind and a healthy mind is better for prog than just endless 16, 18-hour prog. Especially if it's your first time, you can't expect you'll be done with it in 1 or 2 days. You have to expect that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday, Monday, that those are all possibilities that you're going to have to work with. And if you are spent by the 3rd or 4th day, and you're still not looking like there's going to be that place that's like in, like just ready for you to like finish it, like you're on that cusp of winning, then keeping that healthy mind and mentality is way more important than anything else. You know, make sure that you're regularly getting up, walking around. Anytime anyone needs to use the restroom, get up and do that anyway. Get the blood flowing. Drink water a lot. Don't rely on things like energy drinks or sugar rushes or anything like that. It is so much about keeping a steady mind and a steady diet and just minor physical activity, anything to keep blood flowing so you can keep your brain working. Of course, there's always 1 or 2 people in every group at least that just they sleep 2 hours the night before and then they're complaining 7 hours into your 16-hour prog that they're so tired and they need a break. And it's the worst. It completely kills morale. It completely kills progress in the middle of everything. And while there are definitely breaks that you should be taking, 30-minute, 45-minute breaks to eat or analyze or whatever it is you want to do, and of course sleep, you know, the 8-hour breaks, and you should be taking 8-hour breaks to sleep, then it's just that people have to commit to that. And there's people who are just so lazy about it, who just are like, yeah, I'm gonna hardcore raid, and then they just shit all over themselves for 3 days, and it's the worst fucking experience. It's terrible raiding with people when they do that, because they bring morale down because they're just like, their energy is so depleted and negative because of it. So it's just, it's the absolute worst. So taking care of yourself is my #1 piece of advice, because if you don't do that, the people around you are going to be miserable and you're going to be miserable, even if you end up having fun or enjoying that you killed the raid real fast. Anyway, 2, I notice your camera's always off during patch release streams. If not the whole time, then a good chunk. Is this because of early morning lighting? No, it's because I'm getting footage to use for raid guides or for uploads of any kind, because my face doesn't need to be in a video for me to explain a guide or anything. So if I can remove it as a factor but still cover up the chat window, that works well for me. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, Haps, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Since we're 3 or so months behind schedule, do you think we'll get any kind of trailer at E3? They'll just play the full trailer at E3. I have no doubt about that. But they're not going to have anything else to share, any new trailers or whatever. They're just going to play the full trailer that we've already seen at E3. Of that, I'm pretty certain. This is a short one. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello. Hi. How many jobs is too many jobs? There's never too many jobs. And what would happen at that point? We'd make more jobs. Continue game without new jobs or Final Fantasy VII? Final Fantasy 17 online would have mostly the same jobs that we have right now. They wouldn't just be like, well, we'll take the extra ones and we'll make a new game. That sounds like a good... No, it wouldn't be that. Don't expect a 17 online for a very, very, very long time. Like I said, they'll sooner do a full-on graphical engine update to 14 before they do a new MMO. Because they already have 3 MMOs, and oddly enough, they're making an offline version of the Dragon Quest MMO, even though the Dragon Quest MMO is still getting updated and has a new update coming soon. But it's not coming to the States. They really need to bring Dragon Quest X offline to the States. Come on, Dragon Quest XI did so well over here, and you already announced 12 and Dragon Quest III Octopath. Come on, just release 10 offline here. Please, do it. Alright, so last week's episode dragged on super long because I waited a really long time to do a lightning round. I'm going to start my lightning round now because I'm actually getting kind of close to the bottom, but I've already skipped a bunch of questions. And I probably just want to start that now. There's one really long one towards the bottom that has to do with Grahatia. And it's just asking me what I think of how his character has been since we got back to the source. I mean, he still feels the same to me. He's just finally getting to live out his dream. And then there was another one where there's damage. Yeah, unfortunately, this person apologized. English isn't their first language, so I did have a hard time looking over those questions. I just had a hard time doing it, so I apologize. But I also don't have great answers for either of the questions. Like, I kind of get them, but I also just don't feel like I have good answers for them. So that's unfortunately one. That's a really, really long one towards the end, like 6 days ago from when I'm seeing this. I saw somebody asking about what jobs are controller friendly and fun. Honestly, the only jobs I don't like on controller are really healers. And I have played a healer on controller. My whole Let's Play series was me playing White Mage on controller. And it's just targeting party members. Also, I really like healing alliance members in 24-mans because sometimes there's just healers in other parties that are just not on top of things. And I like to bring that extra like carry mentality also for rezzing them. So that was never a big thing. So honestly, for me, it's just healers. Everything else I felt pretty comfortable with on controller. I've at least dabbled with them a little bit on controller. One thing I really like on controller is doing positionals on like Monk, where you lock on and move between like the flank and the rear. I still definitely prefer doing it on PC, but it has a very, I guess, a very static feeling that is pretty comfortable for me. And then let's see, there was another one. A question about Elezen lore. I am so not an expert that I shouldn't be answering that. Like, I dig into character lores in specific chunks. Like, when talking about male Viera, I, of course, look up the Mikote lore because of the what is it, Keepers of the Moon, I think it is. It's been so long, so I can't even remember. Where the way that the males are treated in that. But other than that, I just don't keep up with that all that much. Somebody asked a question about crowd control. Didn't I answer this last week? I'm almost positive I answered this last week. Maybe I read it after last week's episode and I just kind of associated it in my brain. Crowd control, they don't want to make crowd control mandatory in most cases because then you have to bring certain jobs or you have to give everyone the same crowd control, and neither of those things are really particularly good. Silence being just coverable by a couple of rolls, and I guess maybe like a slow or a bind being covered by a couple. Things like that are fine, but it's just essentially it's slowing you down for the sake of making you cast one extra ability and ignore something. And it said they definitely like to make sure that players are constantly moving forward and that they don't feel like they need to slow the pace at all to use things like crowd control. It's definitely a difference in philosophy. Some people really enjoy the more slow churn of making sure enemies are carefully controlled and carefully and encounters are carefully executed upon in such a way that if a sleep is gone for too long, if a bind misses, that everything pretty much falls apart. But there's also a large chunk of people that want to just go. And, oh, that's what I get for having my lunch plate right here with me. And it's a clash of philosophies, and that's just something people are always going to disagree on. So I think they'll always lean towards, what they do right now, as opposed to slowing things down and going with crowd control, except in very exact circumstances, like with E8 Savage. E8 Savage ad phase, not super specific, but definitely one where, making sure you have stuns available and silences available and things like that are a little bit more important, but are also still supported within standard comp a little bit more easily, I suppose. What's it called? My friend's excited about playing an MMO, but turned off that he'll need 70 levels before he can play it, but you don't want to encourage him to skip. Think we should just have new classes starting lower for new players? No, I think it's fine, because then it matters. So here's the thing. For a new player, it makes sense. And here's the thing. I know you're specifically asking if a new player could unlock a job at a lower level. But if an existing player were to unlock it, it would be what we're kind of used to. And I understand that, but that's, unfortunately, with the way those jobs are designed, that's going to suck for the low level. Like, it's going to be unbearable for the low level person if you've seen how some jobs perform at the lower levels. Dancer is like one of the only ones I could think of that has incredible power. Other than potencies, I mean, just the way that they play, it feels so incomplete, more so than jobs that come out at the low levels, oddly enough. So here's the thing. I wouldn't say no to this idea. I think you've thought it out well enough, but I don't think it's something they're ever going to do. I think the idea of getting to these jobs and unlocking them and them being lore relevant is more important to the developers than a brand new player being able to play it. Not to mention that your friend doesn't have... It's less that your friend needs to play through 70 levels to get to it. Again, it's a difference in philosophy or mentality. The story is not a hurdle. The story is content that gets you to more things. So if you enjoy the story, if you take your time and enjoy the story and watch it, then all of a sudden that's not a problem, the 70 levels to get there, because you've experienced basically multiple seasons of a fantasy RPG along the way and gotten hundreds of hours. And if you're playing with your friends, of course, you've had experiences with them, and that's all great. But, that's not everyone's cup of tea. And so, I mean, where do we meet in the middle there? I mean, your idea is kind of that middle, but I just don't think they'll ever take that route. Let's see, what was another one? Do you think they'll introduce new leveling system on top of or separate from our current leveling? No, they'll never do that. They'll never, layer another thing on top. outside of specific areas like Bozja and Eureka. They'll just keep raising the level cap, or they'll do a level squish like World of Warcraft. So I don't think it would ever be anything more than that. Do you think we're ever going to deal with the 13th? I think they're going to leave that door open for in the case that we do it. I always think it's a possibility. Whether or not we do is a totally different story. That's on them. And I think I will never say that that's not possible, because it's very possible. As long as it's about that and not about the Heidel and Zodiark storyline, because we're moving on from that. And it is still kind of part of the Heidel and Zodiark storyline, so... But again, it's a loose thread, so I think the opportunity is always there. We had a first-time asker if you ever visit your restaurant in Australia. Yeah, I'm sure Ethos wants me to go to Australia at some point, but who knows, man. We have all the DPS sharing gear with other jobs, with Reaper coming in the except for scouting gear. Yeah, everyone's making the prediction that the next Melee, whenever we see it, will be a scouting DPS, and I don't think that would be 7.0. I think that'd be 8.0 at the earliest, but yeah, I think that's a reasonable guess, that the DPS after Reaper would be scouting. As for what job it is, I got nothing on that front. I got absolutely nothing on that front. Someone was asking why you can't earn previous season rewards for wolf marks for the feast in particular. Yeah, I've always been the opinion that all the armor should kind of be there, and that they should release new armors, but then still allow you to use the wolf collars to buy pretty much any season. Which I guess I don't PvP enough. My brain tells me that you should be able to do that already, but my brain also knows that they don't do a lot of things I think they should do. So, yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, other than the dyeable stuff you win for getting in like the top 10, top 100, I think it's reasonable enough for the undyed stuff that, you know, or that maybe something like that would be possible. I think that's completely reasonable. There's someone who's asking, why don't Square Enix ship to Australia or Oceanic regions? I think it's because it's too expensive. The cost of doing anything with Australia and the Oceanic regions is very high. It's what stopped them from doing it for a really long time. And they've already said the amount of money they have to spend on the Oceanic servers is massive. Like, it's way more expensive than what the other ones are going to be asking for. So, I think that's probably part of the reason. I don't know much about shipping laws or, I guess, cost of shipping with Australia, but I know it's massive. And that's probably enough to keep them from wanting to do it, even if the people in Australia actually do want to buy these items. So... best thing I can think is use Itaikuji and hope that they have it, but they don't always have everything you want, so at least worth a look. Somebody asked me what I think about a Chrono Trigger crossover. Who needs a crossover? The main villain is Lavos, obviously. What was another one? Character creation stuff. Do you think they'll have a hard time adding new facial features? Not if they do an engine update. I mean, that would be the whole point of an engine update, would be so that those kind of things are easier to do. So, definitely no with that. Somebody asked me what I think the physique of female Hrothgar is. I don't know. I actually think they'll be very similar to the male Hrothgar. Remember that they have a matriarchal society, so the women are the major figurehead of their societies. So I think they're going to be very similar in physique. I also think that from a development standpoint, they're going to want to keep them similar to the physique so they can reuse as much of the skeleton assets that they can. So I think, yeah, they'll be tall, hulking lion women, and that's it. And that they'll look strong as hell. So that's what I'm thinking. What do you think about the area compared to Bozja? I actually really like Bozja. I love World War I aesthetics. Zadnor is more fantasy war kind of style, you know, with the floating rocks and everything. And I think it's cool. I think it's a little too open, a little too barren. And after playing Bozja, that's kind of a surprise. But Bozja, again, I always really like the trenches and the World War I aesthetics. So that never really bothered me, I suppose, in Bozja. But I like both of them for different reasons. But they're definitely not as eventful, either of them, as a lot of the Eureka zones. So there's that to keep in mind as well. Somebody was asking me about mechanics from other games that I would want to see in Endwalker. Here's the thing. If you think of it, very likely some variation of it already exists. It's just about whether or not they make a marker for it, like dropping your own... like the misdirection, or like, I mean, for example, they could do away with misdirection and they could just add 4 arrows over your head that does the same thing, but you can only move in 90-degree angles. Like it's essentially the exact same thing, but slightly changed, and something like that would be completely reasonable, I think. And then you can have a split damage marker, but then we've seen they do like split damage markers with gaze AoEs in the middle. Maybe they also do a split damage AoE, but it spawns, I don't know, maybe the split damage AoE fires split damage line AoEs from the center point, so people need to split up into groups from the firing point. Like, you can just layer things on like that. So it's less about what I think about from other games, but more so that every idea is a variation on another idea that we've already seen. So it's just about thinking about things like that for me. Like a tank buster that gives the main tank a vuln and then goes to the second tank, but that there's still a third hit that needs to be split by the party. You know, all of a sudden the tank buster is a party AoE also. And it's just little things like that. So I guess, and then creating markers for those kind of things is obviously a big thing that they want to do as well. Oh man, I've been talking so much today. Let me get through the rest of this. Someone was asking about materia for Monk. The Balance Discord is always the place to go for builds for specific jobs. For Monk, it's crit hit, direct hit, determination, done. You want to keep your GCD between 1.92 and 1.94, if I recall, except in Bojja, where you want as much haste as possible. But haste, you can't get more skill speed there, so specifically haste from the Bojjan gear. And is there anything else here? Memorial Day weekend. What's going on? This one's a spoiler question. I'll answer without reading it, but I don't know what he's doing there either, and I really want to ask Koji how it's possible. So if you're seeing this, just know that I read the Memorial Day weekend intro. You know what I just said about whatever it was without actually telling you what it is. Let's see. Someone, Geomancer. There's chance there's critical engagements. Question. 14 story is done. Do you think they'll start a new online game? No, they'll just do a graphic engine update and move on to the next plot line, like we were talking about earlier. What kind of gear or glamour would be good for Dancer and Ninja? You don't want to ask me glam questions. Just get the highest item level and hope that you look cool in it. That's how I operate my life. And I think that might have been the last one. Let me see. Blood weapon charges. Yeah, that's another one. Let's see. What else? May get, no. I already answered that one. Weathered weapons, no. 5.6, no. Are there any places we haven't visited yet that you want to I mean, I want to visit everywhere. There's no place in particular. I think I answered this last week. Why do I feel like this is the second question that I had last week? Maybe I just read these already and I just can't remember. Yeah, but Mrhappy, New World. I mean, I want to go everywhere. There's no place I don't want to see in this world. So that's a question with no specific answer. I just want everything. And I will always want everything. Let's see. Anything else? That is the Xenos Redemption arc and the redo and summoners. And are aetheryte crystals used in wars? I mean, they would probably be destroyed, which if you tried to use one after it's destroyed, your body would be lost in the ethereal sea, and then you would not be having a good time. You'd basically be not alive, not dead, but you would really wish you were. It'd be like purgatory at the end of the day, so you really wouldn't want that. No, I see one. There's no way I'm answering. And yeah, I think that covers pretty much everything. So hopefully that lightning round was sufficient. Still took like 15 minutes, but that's a-okay because one question was definitely not lightning rounded. So anyway, thank you for watching this week's episode of Mondays with Mrhappy. If you have a question, be sure to ask them in the comment section of the video below this video. Comment section of the video below this video. Good fucking wording. You can tell I'm tired. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week. Until then, take care.